Agenda.
May I call the meeting of the Parsippany Troy Hills Board of Education to order on March 27th, 2025. In compliance with Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, entitled Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided as specified in the act in the following manner. A meeting notice was published in the newspaper and on the district website on January 8th, 2025. In addition, the notice of the meeting was posted at the municipal building in the schools, and a copy of the notice filed with the township clerk and transmitted to other newspapers on March 18th, 2025. The Daily Record, the Star Ledger, and Parsippany Focus tap into Parsippany Patch in the district website. This regular public board meeting is being video recorded as per bylaw 168. The recordings of these meetings will be available on our district website and our Video on the Go YouTube channel. We ask that you please refrain from using student or staff names in your statement. Professionalism is expected at all times. May we have the roll call, please?
Mrs. Abraham?
Here.
Mr. Barrios?
Here.
Mr. DeVito?
Here.
Mrs. Mayer?
Here.
Mr. Rhea?
Here.
Mrs. Chappelle?
Here.
Dr. Wright?
Here.
Mr. Chaffo?
Here.
Mrs. Kogan?
Here. Please stand for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have our student committee reports. Emma, you want to go first?
Good evening. I'm Emma Gonzalez from Parsippany High School, and I'm so excited to share this week's past events with you. Great job to our Parsippany High School Guys and Dolls cast. The musical was an amazing showing of the hard work our talented singers and dancers have put in. It was one of our biggest shows that our school has had, and the success was amazing. Great job to the cast, pit, and crew. Today, our Spanish club had the fun activity of making churros and chocolate, and everyone that participated had a great time. Additionally, our music department and peers have left for their Washington, D.C. trip. Today, they have sung with the Newark Charter School in Newark, Delaware, as a performance clinic for both the band and the choir. Not only do these trips inspire our future musicians, but allow them to grow and learn new techniques while being introduced to new peers and styles of music. Currently, our student council is working on preparing for our Powder Puff game, which is juniors versus seniors. We are super excited to prepare and get to run such a fun event for all of our classmates. Alongside Powder Puff, many of our clubs are preparing for Red Stock. We are so excited to bring fun activities and events to the community. Our school is also currently looking for our school representatives to go to Girls State and Boys State. We are so thankful for this beautiful program that our school takes part in as a chance to have 2 lucky students participate and learn more about the United States government while making new connections. Additionally, our junior class is preparing both for next year and our junior dance. There are 24 spots open for our full-year senior internship program, and our junior class is so grateful for this opportunity. Furthermore, our junior and senior class are both preparing for their respective proms. With all of our Parsippany High School sports, we are off to such a great start. First off, congratulations to all of our winter athletes that received their all-conference awards. We are so proud of each and every one of them. In order, our sports are beginning their games. First, we have our boys tennis team with their first match tonight, and our boys lacrosse team with their first game tomorrow on the 28th. Our boys baseball game has their first game against Mountain Lakes on the 31st, and likewise, our girls softball team and our girls lacrosse team have their first game on April 1st. And lastly, our track team has their first meet on April 7th. We wish all of the teams good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, all. Let's get started with this month's Viking Report. Starting off with essential student council updates. The student council is currently preparing for their next event, which will be the Fall Pep Rally. They're currently working on selecting a set of entertaining games and making the script. Additionally, student council is also working on award nominations for the upcoming NJASC Spring Conference, being held at Six Flags. Moving on to other PHHS events and updates. Here are some highlights from events and initiatives happening throughout PHHS. Our Science Olympiad team recently showcased their incredible talents, competing against the top 27 teams in New Jersey at Middlesex College on March 11th. After taking on 23 rigorous science and engineering challenges, they secured a historic 10th place finish, setting a new school and district record. A huge congratulations to them. Junior prom sign-up paperwork is available to students. J-prom will be on April 25th. Moving on to the arts, our PHHS band hosted the 25th annual NJSSA, 25th annual NJSMA High School Concert Band Festival and walked away with numerous honors. Their hard work and dedication continue to make the Viking community proud. If you have a sweet tooth, you'll be excited to know that our consumer science class just wrapped up their latest round of the Cupcake Wars. Be sure to check out the video of the competition on YouTube at Par Hills TV. The class of 2025 is hosting a t-shirt quilts fundraiser. E-cards can be purchased for $25 with a $50 value, with 100% of the proceeds going to the class of 2025. The latest due date to place an order is April 25th. PHHS will participate in the Relay for Life event on May 10th from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. at PHHS track. Students, staff, and community members are encouraged to join Team Viking Nation in support of the American Cancer Society. All right, moving on to the PHHS athletics updates. Everyone who wants to stay updated on Viking sports, scores, achievements, and events should follow the Par Hills Sports Instagram page at Par Hills Athletics. The following are the upcoming Viking games. Boys varsity golf will play Hapakong High School at Farmstead Golf and Country Club at 3:15 p.m. on March 27th today. The varsity boys tennis team will face Morristown High School at Frelinghuysen Middle School at 4 p.m. on March 27th. The girls varsity lacrosse team will play Hackenstown High School at Par Hills at 4 p.m. on March 28th. And that's going to be it for this month's Viking report. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. There's a lot going on at the schools. Do we have any questions for our students? Dr. Wright?
Do we have a date for Red Stock yet?
I believe that Red Stock is scheduled for May 24th, but I'm not 100% sure. I think it's like in the air. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
And now we have our presentation. Ms. Charlene Peterson from New Jersey School Boards, the field service representative, will be giving a presentation on the Board of Education self-evaluation and superintendent evaluation process.
Good, thank you so much. It is my pleasure to be here. And I always love listening to the students, and it feels like between the churros, the chocolate, and the cupcake wars that we missed a good opportunity, right? So just wanted to, like you said, I'm here to talk about both the evaluation processes, and the timing is perfect, right? Because it's about time to get started on the superintendent's evaluation. So I'm going to go through that first, and then go into the board self-evaluation. New Jersey School Boards has completely redone the evaluation tool, so just kind of wanted to share with you what that looks like. So am I pointing? Yeah. Yep, it's on here. You just want to click it for me then, or?
You want a hard copy, Charlie? Charlie, do you want a hard copy?
Oh,
From the audience.
thank you so much.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, do you want me to just move forward if the slides are moving and just keep?
Yeah, go ahead and
Okay, so I'm going to start out talking about, the purpose of the evaluation as much as we know that it's required. We know that the evaluation of the superintendent is really an opportunity for the board and the superintendent to really kind of reflect on the year that they've had last year and really celebrate the accomplishments. Good. And then be able to, kind of come together and be able to, talk about the goals, talk about the work that took place. And then really, the bottom line of all of this is about the students that we just heard from and being able to do everything we can to improve the quality of education that we make available to them. So as we talk about the superintendent's evaluation, sometimes we just think about it as, here it is, that time again, but it's really a process that goes on throughout the entire year, and there's a lot of parts to it, starting with the calendar, with training, with goal setting. So just recognizing, that it is more complex than just a one-time event. So wanted to, also start recognizing the fact that there are legal requirements with the superintendent's evaluation. I know when I was on the board, I didn't realize how much of this was legally required until I got this job. So just, to make you aware, so it's required that the board has to evaluate the superintendent at least once a year. It has to be in writing. The board and superintendent should meet to discuss the findings. The evaluation should be based on the goals and objectives of the district, so that's why we always have, those annual goal-setting discussions. The responsibilities of the superintendent as described in the job description, and then other such criteria as prescribed by the State Board of Ed, and we'll see what that looks like in just a minute. From the regulation side of it, the performance report has to be prepared by July 1st, and that means the entire process has to be done. So not just the report, but also the sit-down conference. And so the evaluation should be prepared by the total membership of a majority of the total membership of the board, and include areas of strength, areas needing improvement, areas for professional growth, and then it should be tied back to our students, with the last piece of it being that summary conference sit-down meeting, and that is also here that it needs to include a majority of the total membership of the board. A lot of times, I know even when I was on the board, we didn't do it that way. Sometimes it was just a couple people that sat down with the superintendent, not really realizing that here it is in statute and code that it's supposed to include a majority of the total membership of the board. And really, from New Jersey School Board's perspective, we really suggest that anyone who's not conflicted should be part of that evaluation conference. So we know that if any one of the board members, and I know that that's the case here, right, have a relative employed in the district, that the guidance we get from the School Ethics Commission is that you would be prohibited from participating in any and all issues related to the superintendent, including the evaluation of the superintendent's performance. So essentially, when a member is conflicted, they have no more rights than any other member of the public. So they really need to be completely removed from the process. So I talked about the fact that the evaluation is due by July 1st. And, at one point, boards used to say, well, like, what happens if we don't get it done by then? Like, is there a board police? What happens to us? So a few years ago, CUSAC stepped in and said, okay, we'll take care of that, and assigned 6 points then to, to the fact that the board needs to complete that by July 1st. And then also importantly is the requirement that new board members need to be trained on this process. So that now is part of Governance 1. So that we make sure then that in addition to opportunities like this to come and talk to the whole board, of making sure then that individual board members receive that training, and now that you have to complete your Governance 1 within the first 90 days, then we're sure then that you're able to have that training before it's time to start the superintendent's evaluation. And when we talked about the evaluation having it completed by July 1st, really that just doesn't happen by accident, right? So from the board's perspective, we should be thinking about this almost right after reorg and kind of thinking about what are the steps. We should, be putting a calendar together and just kind of talking about, or having a plan about how we're going to accomplish this work by July 1st. So, I mentioned the fact that the evaluation is essentially a process. And so it starts right in, the year starts July 1st, and that's typically when we have goal setting, right? Or we have the goals that we're going to evaluate the superintendent on, and that's usually when that conversation takes place, is sometime in the summer. And then throughout that process, then we know that we get updates and continue to have conversations about the process and the goals, right up until the time to take part in the evaluation. So, we had mentioned that the goals are legally, we're part of what is legally required. So it's, again, just an important opportunity for the board to kind of help set the direction for the district, right? This is kind of our role of helping determine the what. That we are identifying those 3 or 4 things that we think are so important to move the district forward, that we're going to hold the superintendent accountable by putting him in his evaluation. So again, that's how we are helping forward our governance role. So one of the steps in the process that we have started talking about, and I can say not many boards that I know of do it, but it really is a good process to consider, and that is to have a pre-conference before the evaluation starts, before anyone starts writing it. And it really is the opportunity for the board and the superintendent to sit together and make sure that everyone gets their questions answered. You know, we know that board members come, you know, some are brand new, some have been on the board in a while, you're on different committees, so not everyone has the same experiences, right, going into the evaluation process. So just talking about the value of having that conversation ahead of time, making sure everyone's questions are answered, making sure everyone has the understanding that they need in order to write an informed evaluation. So, you know, one of the kind of the challenges, particularly for new board members, is, you know, you start on essentially the beginning of January, right? And the evaluation year has started July 1st. 6 months, half of the evaluation year has passed already. So one of the important ways then to make sure then that you have the information you need is to consider evidence, the evidence that the superintendent would provide about what has been accomplished. So that with that evidence, oftentimes you are able to evaluate something that perhaps you weren't able to see yourself, but the evidence is so strong that it allows you to be able to participate, you know, in the evaluation. So that's really then, you know, from the board's perspective, where if we say, you know, that we stay out of the day-to-day operation of the district, how do we know what things have been accomplished, and how can we hold the superintendent accountable? And evidence is the way then that we would do that. So as we look at New Jersey School Board's evaluation tool, it has like kind of 3 progressions to it. So the first one starts out just capturing individual input, where the superintendent fills it out individually, and each board member who is not conflicted is able to fill it out individually. And then those individual inputs, New Jersey School Boards compiles them into one anonymous document, and it kind of happens instantaneously. Like as soon as the first board member is done, we kind of start that compiled document. And when the second one's done, it adds that, so that when the last board member is done, the compiled document is done and ready for the board. So it just, you know, I have to manually set a flag in the system that says, okay, you know, the board's done, and then a report is made available to the board president. It's tied to the board president's username and password to be able to access that document. And then the last piece of it then is, so we know that that compiled report reflects all of the opinions. We say that the superintendent, similar to all of the other work that the board does, the outcome is the majority opinion, and that then should also be the case for the superintendent's evaluation. So we also have a template that the state identifies as kind of the annual performance report, then which is the superintendent's actual evaluation, which then is the extraction from the compiled document of all the opinions to then the board having a discussion using that to determine the majority opinion. So the tool has 2 sections, and we developed it together with the Superintendent's Association, and it starts with, you know, the district goals, because of the importance of them being part of the evaluation process. And then there's also leadership standards. And we used what used to be called the ISLIC standards, which are National Education Leadership Standards. There's 11 of those. We kind of consolidated them down to 6 because those standards are also used for other leadership positions, so needed to extract those that are relevant to the board evaluating the superintendent. So when we talked about the criteria prescribed by the State Board of Ed, the New Jersey State Board of Ed did adopt these national leadership standards. So that's, you know, how this follows then that adoption. So in terms of utilizing the evaluation tool itself, so it starts with your district census, which is kind of, you know, your roster in our system, so that we, you know who to send the information to. And the process starts with the superintendent as the first one to log in. And then once the superintendent completes his part, he has a 48-hour notice then in between there, before the board gets access to make any changes. Or, as I had yesterday, a superintendent called and say, Charlene, I hit end by mistake. Please don't send it to the board in the next 48 hours because I'm not done yet. So, so that can happen too. But it does allow the superintendent that opportunity. And then once those 48 hours is up, then the link is automatically sent to the board members, so you don't need to do anything to make that happen. So, oops, did I do one too far? So like I said, it starts with the goals portion, so the superintendent, like I said, is the first one to log in, will input the district goals, and then do a self-assessment for each one of the goals, whether it's thought the goal was achieved, whether satisfactory progress was made, or little or no progress was made. And one of the things we're also seeing kind of more multi-year goals. So sometimes if this is only year one of a 2-year goal, perhaps, satisfactory progress is the best that we can accomplish at that time. So sometimes we need to take that into consideration. The superintendent can then provide comments, or if there's that evidence then of what would like the board members to consider, and has the opportunity to input that right in the tool, so that when the board member logs in and you're looking at this goal, you are able to then just click on the evidence that the superintendent provided for you then to help make an informed evaluation. So then when you as the board member log in, then you will be able to see the superintendent's rating, the superintendent's evidence, and then you'll be asked to provide your rating. What do you think? Do you think the goal was achieved? Do you think satisfactory progress was made, or little or no progress was made? And then you are asked to provide a comment to support your rating. A lot of times I see board members kind of directing or writing these comments as if they're speaking to the superintendent, but you're actually speaking to your fellow board members and helping them understand why you gave the rating that you did. So kind of take that into consideration, and it really is helpful when the board has its sit-down conference to kind of look at those comments and really understand, kind of what one another was thinking. Okay. So then the next part of it are the six leadership standards here. Oops, I don't know how it went. Just forward one more. With the 6 leadership standards, and so these standards really tried to capture the essence of the work that the superintendent does, because it's pretty much almost everything in the district, and just trying to make sure then that we have captured all of that. Wanted to kind of draw your attention to the rating scale, and also the last rating there of not observed, and particularly for newer board members, just wanted to, give you the opportunity to evaluate in places where you feel comfortable doing it, but not having to evaluate in places where you don't. So not observed is not a positive, it's not a negative, it just simply is saying I didn't have sufficient evidence to evaluate that. So this is an example then of what one of the standards looks like. So in this case, it's the first one. So there's just kind of an overall standard statement. And then one of the things that we did when we redesigned this tool was provided like a specific definition for what each rating means for that standard. Because what we were finding is maybe 2 board members had the same opinion of the superintendent's performance, but to one member that meant exemplary, and to the other one that meant proficient. So trying to get the board members to kind of have more of a common understanding. Again, the superintendent has the ability to provide links, and so a lot of times it's usually like a link to like a Google Doc or something, or like a folder then that has like all of the evidence related to that particular standard. And then while we are asking the board to evaluate the overall performance of the standard, rather than just having you go right to the bottom and evaluate the standard, there are indicators in there. And it was, intentional, I guess, to have the board members have to put an X or have to put a rating in each one of the indicators, so that we're sure that you gave this some thought, you considered all of the different components of that evaluation before making an overall rating. The system doesn't automatically fill in what that overall rating for the standard is. That's something that, you know, you will still need to do. And some of it is because things may be weighted differently. Like, an indicator might be really important to your district and maybe not as important to another. So you are the one that needs to be able to make that determination. And then you are also able to provide a comment, again, for your fellow board members' consideration for each one of the standards. So then, like I said, then when the board is done and it's ready to, you know, compile the report, then like I said, the board president has access to, we kind of separate the report by the goals piece of it, the standards piece of it, and then that template that can be used then to, you know, complete the annual performance report. So this is an example of what then that compiled report would look like. So if we look in this example, 8 members were eligible to participate in the superintendent's evaluation. In this first goal here, the superintendent rated it as achieved. 6 board members agreed. 1 board member thought satisfactory progress was made, and 1 thought little or no progress was made. See the comments that the superintendent provided, and then the asterisks then are the board members' comments. So again, it doesn't identify who made the comments, but again, just provides you with all of the information that was submitted. And then you can now see how, you know, how this would be helpful when the board would, you know, have its discussion about the majority opinion. This helps to make that clear. Then here's an example of, kind of from a similar concept of what the standard, compiled standard would look like, kind of showing, you know, different, you know, importantly being able to see that there, while there's an overall rating for the standard, kind of some of the differences and the highlights in some of the indicators. So that, you know, would be cause for conversation by the board in terms of feedback that you would be providing to the superintendent. So then that last piece of it then is writing that annual performance report. So we typically would use that compiled document that has everyone's opinions from it. And then typically then, you know, the board would meet in executive session, recognizing that the superintendent would always receive a RICE notification to talk about the majority opinion, right? So a lot of times in a lot of boards, someone, either the board president or their designee, has prepared a draft of kind of what that majority opinion document would look like. It's a lot of times it's easier to start with a draft rather than just start with the scratch, you know, from scratch with the compilation, and then kind of tweak the draft or have conversations about that. The important part is that everyone who is, you know, eligible has had the opportunity to provide input, so the board then is able to come to a consensus or an agreement on the majority opinion. And then with the last piece of it then, you know, being the final outcome of that annual performance report. So this is just a sample, of what the template looks like. And again, just kind of showing, you know, for CUSAC, when it's your time to ask, you know, this, that, to demonstrate that you've completed the evaluation by July 1st, this would be, you know, they usually just want this signature page that shows the signatures and the date, so. And then it also allows the board to evaluate the superintendent just on the goals, provide an overall rating, overall supporting remarks, the same thing with the standards. And then the way that we kind of answered those areas of strength and areas where more growth is needed is by keeping it based on the standards. That, you know, sometimes we would see board members evaluating or making comments on things that really weren't related to the work that was identified and the things that we told, you know, that the superintendent was told it would be evaluated on. So this is a way to help make sure that we stay focused on those areas that was agreed upon that the superintendent would be evaluated on. And then the last piece of it then, or to this process then, is that annual summary sit-down conference between the board with the majority of the total membership present. And again, the superintendent would receive a RICE notice. And, you know, it's suggested that the board share the the performance report a couple days before that sit-down conference, so the superintendent has the opportunity to look it over. And I even have had a couple boards say to me that what they even do is have like either the president and vice president or a couple of people even sit down. Like instead of just handing it to them, say, you know, we're gonna sit down, talk about it, see if you have any questions, so that when you sit down with the full board, you're prepared to have a meaningful discussion. And so, and you know, we talked about the importance of, while, you know, it's just required that a majority be there, the importance of, what I said, everyone being there who can, is because this is the opportunity for the minority opinion to be heard. You know, if when we looked at that goal summary and we saw that 6 people had agreed that the goal was achieved, but one person thought that, you know, only satisfactory progress was made and one thought little or no progress was made, if I was one of those 2 people, perhaps my opinion did not find its way into that majority opinion document that the superintendent received. But this is my opportunity then to have my voice heard and say, you know what, while this is what that document reflects, I was expecting to see this or this, so this is your chance to do that. And you never know when you're going to be the holder of that minority opinion and have your chance. So that's why we suggest that everyone who is able to be there should. So as we kind of look at an evaluation process, oops, did I go too, maybe? So this, you know, you talked about the importance of a calendar. So it's, you know, suggested that you kind of take that July 1 start date and work backwards. And then also try not to add any more meetings, right? You already have enough as it is, right? So kind of say like, when's our last meeting in June? Okay, and I think those are the actual dates from your calendar, right? So I think so June 17th is your last meeting. So then you say, okay, then that's when we should have that sit-down conference with the superintendent. That way you're sure that you are going to make the July 1st deadline. Okay, well then the next step backing into that then is the board kind of having that, you know, that sit-down session to determine the majority opinion, and just kind of keep backing up through the steps then to help you identify then kind of when you need to get started to make sure then that you're able to meet that timeline. And then as we kind of, you know, kind of reflect on this process and say, well, you know, what makes for a meaningful process is the fact that everyone has the right to be heard, right? That the board is able to come to a consensus on the majority opinion, that the minority opinion has the right to be heard, that we're working on kind of building that collaborative, productive relationship, and really a partnership as well with the board and superintendent. We're in compliance with statute and code. And again, the intent of all of this is a framework for student success. So just kind of bringing all of those, everything we do, all the pieces come back to our students. So kind of what considerations as we're thinking about this process is, again, you know, we talked about the fact that it's a process, right? And it's not just a once-a-year thing. Again, recognizing the fact that the evaluation year starts on July 1. A lot of times boards tend to focus on whatever is the latest and greatest thing that just happened, and we see that tends to take up a, you know, a bigger space in the evaluation instead of, you know, there's a full year's worth of performance to consider. The importance of updates, the importance of evidence, and from the board's perspective, you know, making sure that if you are eligible to participate, how important it is for you to participate. This really becomes a much more meaningful document and conversation when everyone's voices are included. And then the other part of it, you know, we talked a little bit about making sure that we keep the evaluation focus on the standards and on the goals. You know, I had a situation last year where a superintendent had reached out to me and said, you know, the goal was, and I think it was like to do a demographic study. And he's like, I did everything the board asked. He goes, but then they rated me down because I didn't like the outcome. Like there was too many people that said that there was going to be too many people moving in town, and that wasn't what the board wanted to hear because we didn't have the space. But what I was asked to do, right, was the demographic study. So, you know, from the board's perspective, we have to make sure that we're being fair to the superintendent and evaluating on the things that, you know, that we said that we were going to evaluate him on. So that was, before I move on to the board self-evaluation, just wanted to see if anyone had any questions about the superintendent evaluation process. Okay, also, I have some booklets here. Some of you probably have the booklets already, but for those of you that don't, I'll leave them with Joni then. And
Shirley, I have two questions.
Sure.
First, hypothetically, if a superintendent was retiring for the purpose of retirement, or was leaving the district for that purpose, CUSAC doesn't excuse this process from being done, correct?
No.
Okay, and the superintendent evaluation must start with the input of data from them before the board can do their part.
In this tool, yes.
In this tool, okay, great. We are just talking about potentially moving our board elections from November to April. It would seem that an April election with potentially new board members would add a little bit more stress or complexity to completing the CSA evaluation. What's been your experiences with boards that have April elections and how they kind of approach this versus a November election?
So I'll tell you what our recommendation is versus what my experience is, right? So the recommendation would be that while we are held to the July 1 deadline, that it would be our recommendation to boards that have an April election to have the outgoing board complete the evaluation before the new board comes in. And it just, like you said, just that timeline. Otherwise, you're only here, a month or so, or a couple, before the process gets started. I mean, I even had a situation where a board that had the April election, they had a few conflicted members, then they got some new members, and in order to meet that legal requirement of a majority of the board completing the evaluation, the new members had to do it because the old board didn't do it before they left. So it's, you want to make this be meaningful, and you want this to be able to provide, the superintendent and the board kind of the conversations and the direction to help move the district forward. And typically the outgoing board would be the best opportunity to do that, so.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, well then we'll move on to the board self-evaluation then. Like I said, I'm not going to look anything like the last one, and I know that your board is good about filling it out every year. So hopefully you will enjoy seeing the new one here, because the old one was the same way for a long time, right? So in this case, the ratings in the evaluation have changed to now match the rating scale of the superintendent's evaluation rather than having different ones. Thought it was helpful to have them align. So that's start number one. We also thought it is valuable for the board to be able to evaluate itself on its board goals. So a lot of times we set these goals and maybe we don't always hold ourselves accountable or don't have the same conversations about the board goals that we do with the district goals. So this then is an opportunity for the board. You don't have to. You can you can say, no, we don't have any, or check. So in that case, then similar to the way that the superintendent has to start that evaluation, in this case, the board president then has to start this evaluation and input the goals, and then can provide any evidence links so that then when the rest of the board logs in, the goals are already there in the evidence for you to evaluate from. And then in terms of the, so I just kind of wanted to show you, I guess, so that this is then kind of a sample of, we were doing some testing, so I think this was from the test that we were doing of just kind of saying then what it would look like. You would see, when you logged in, you would see each one of the goals that the president put in, you'd see that link to the evidence, and then you would mark, again, kind of this similar to the superintendent's evaluation, whether the goal was achieved, satisfactory progress was made, or little or no progress was made. And then last time, there were 9 different performance areas that the board evaluated itself on, so now there are 6. And again, we started out using the key work of school from national school boards, so that kind of we had some kind of like professional standards, right, again, to model this after. So that is kind of and then we also looked at the tools from probably about 18 different states to kind of see what things that they were asking for, and kind of took the best of everything and put it together in this tool. So this then is what one of the standards then looks like. So there's now like a standard statement. And then what is different too is, in the past, there used to be 2 sections for each standard. It used to say about the board and about you as the board member. So now it just asks about the board, trying to kind of, continue to reinforce the point that we're a team, the work that we do, or the way that we make a difference is, how we work together as a team. There is going to be one section at the very end where you'll be able to evaluate yourself as a member, but it's more about your contributions to the team. And in terms of the comments, in the past, there were like the ability to just provide any kind of an open-ended comment about anything related to that standard, right? And we got to see all kinds of things. So again, trying to help keep it more focused. You're asked kind of saying, okay, like what do you think the team's greatest strength is in this area? And what do you think the team's greatest challenge or opportunity is in this area? Again, really trying to keep it focused on the work of the board team. And then, like I said, so that's will be the case for each one of those 6 standards. And then here are those, a sample of, what the individual kind of evaluators are. So again, just talks about how you are helping contribute to the work of the team. And then the last part of it then are the overall reflective questions at the end. Again, what do you consider to be the board's greatest strength that we can build from, and what governance areas will we need to focus on to further our work as an efficient board team? So continuing to keep the focus on your work, keep the focus on the work of the board team, and continue to look at ways that we can further enhance our governance work. So there are, let's see, just wanted to kind of show you then the different reports then that are available through this. So there's 3 different reports here now, so I'm just going to kind of take you through each one of them. So the first one allows you, so now I guess instead of Joni and I having conversations about who finished it and who didn't finish it, right? That you now will have the opportunity to log in yourself and kind of see the completion of the evaluation, so that you can kind of self-monitor. We'll still be happy to help the board in whatever way, but you also have this opportunity to self-monitor. This then, the compilation report doesn't really look much different, other than it, just has kind of the new ratings, and, just kind of the comments now are split between strengths and challenges and opportunities. Here's the kind of what the board goals, so there's each one of the goals, and then what the board's ratings were for the goals. And then this is a new report. It's a chart that kind of summarizes, it allows you to kind of see at a glance for each one of the 6 standards, like how did we say we did? How many of us thought this? How many of us thought we do it this way? So that it, very quickly points out areas that the board does well and areas where the board might want to put more focus and attention on. And then the last chart is kind of the same one that has been in there before, but always thought that it was helpful to be able to compare how you did last year in each one of those 6 standards versus how you did this year, so that the board can continue to monitor its progress and growth. So that was it for the board self-evaluation, and I think they have a copy of the whole thing, right? Yeah, so like what's included in each one of those 6 standards, so that before you log on to do it for the first time, you have the chance to read over first what you're going to be evaluated on. So, any questions about the board self-evaluation?
I think this is very more effective than how it's been done in the past. I really think it holds the board as a whole accountable.
Accountable, yeah.
More than individuals, and I think that's a good focus.
Good.
Since this one is new, will the comparative report actually have last year's information in it? So this first year, there won't be a comparison.
Correct.
Anybody else?
Charlene, I just wanted to say congratulations on your retirement.
Oh, thank
and,
you. You too.
You know, and you've been great, wonderful, and we're happy to wish you the best in your retirement.
Thank you. It's
Hopefully
my
we'll get to
pleasure.
see you maybe one more time before
I
you
was
actually
just to say,
leave.
just say, yeah, we may be back one more time, so, yeah. Okay,
else?
anything else?
Thank you so much.
Thank
No?
you.
It's my pleasure. Do you need the back? Yeah. And you want your copy back? Here you go, thank you. Oh, yours.
Yeah.
It's yours. Got another
Thank you.
one, right? Uh-huh.
All right, so we will move on. Is there any correspondence to come before the board?
No, there's not.
We're up to unfinished business. I know I put the budget on there. I just wanted to make sure that, you know, we recognize that this is our time to be asking any questions. And obviously, you don't need to do it only at a board meeting. You are welcome to compile your questions and either ask for a meeting or, you know, submit your questions. But this is our chance. We can't increase the budget at all, but we can rearrange lines within it if we see things that can have, you know, any adjustments in them. So, and then I also wanted to clarify something that I said at the last meeting regarding the budget and the revenue sources. The 2% property tax levy cap is the maximum increase that we're allowed before presenting any additional increase for a public vote. And there's now a process, for a separate process available to ask the taxpayers for additional revenue for the schools for specific purposes. And this process is something that the district and the board is going to be discussing over the next few months, because I think we all know the current revenue forecasts are just not sustainable for the type of education that, you know, our community expects. So I just want to put it out there that, you know, we're going to have ongoing discussions about how to not be in this same place next year at the same time. So, and does anybody have any questions they want about the budget? And the only other thing I wanted to say, that even though, you know, our administration has obviously worked very hard on this budget, if anybody in the public, if you speak to anybody who thinks they have suggestions or, you know, ideas or something that, you know, ways to get more money, things that we don't really need to spend money on, the administration is open to suggestions. So this is the time that anybody, you know, can bring up their ideas. So, thank you very much. That was my only unfinished business. Does anybody else have an unfinished business? Mr. Barrios?
Thank you, Madam President. Just quick question. Do we have any updates on the current negotiation with the mayor's office or the town is relating to the pilots and any type of compensation to the district at this point in time?
I'm not sure if our committee's going to speak of it at the ad hoc, or you want to take it now?
Yeah, I'll cover it when we do the ad hoc committee.
Okay. Which I think is next anyways, so. Any other unfinished business? Okay, so now we're up to committee and liaison reports. If we want to start at that end of the table, we'll work our way around. Mr. DeVito?
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Cogan. So Buildings and Grounds met earlier this evening. In attendance were myself, Mr. Barrios, Dr. Wright, Ms. Cogan, Mrs. Tedesco, Dr. Sutter, and Mrs. Benos. So we discussed the PHHS cafeteria line serving renovation. District has ordered all the equipment. The bid for construction is on the agenda tonight for approval in the addendum. The lowest bidder did not submit all the paperwork on time, or it was not proper paperwork, so the district is awarding to the next lowest bidder. In regards to Mount Tabor and Littleton, there's roof replacements for that are being planned. Their projects are set to start when school ends in June, and they're expected to be finished by the end of the summer. There was a discussion about CUSAC did the facility walkthroughs. Ms. Tedesco took the county BA through the three of the district schools, Northville, Brooklawn, and PHS. And the county BA was impressed by the schools and said they looked great. All paperwork in each school was in order. And lastly, we had a discussion about the antenna that was going to go into Littleton. There's still some discussion on that looking for FCC approval in order to change the amplification of this for there. So that's still kind of in discussion, so there's no final decision on that. And that is buildings and grounds.
Any questions for Mr. DeVito? All right. Dr. Wright, I don't know that you have a report. Mrs. Chappelle.
Thank you very much. So I have two to report on. One is the Communications Committee. We met on the 24th of March. Attending were President Kogan, Vice President Chaffo, myself, and Jody. We had our incredible Video on the Go producer, Brian Satch, with us to give us an update. And there was quite a few on there. You can see the list in front of you. It's just a few I'll highlight. The great news is that our Video on the Go programs have had over almost 8,000 views in the last month. And that includes over 400 views of the budget presentation. So it's a great, people are paying attention and watching the videos that we're posting out there, so it's great news. And then there are some other great productions that have been published, including Beyond the Bell podcast. We posted our 17th. Who would have thought we'd have so many?
Hit that like button.
I know.
Hit that like button.
I
Hit that
know.
like button.
Seriously.
It's my futures in podcasting.
Damn straight. The 17th one was focused on our STEM pathways, and there are more to come. We're in the process of planning what they're going to be, so more to come on that. There are two spotlights that are in the works. First, the STEM Pathways Impact Showcase. People might remember that the STEM Pathway program involves a special project, and so there's a presentation that they go through, and Brian has reached out to see if there's a way that we can develop a way to showcase what they have worked on, and for those that want to pursue funding for their ideas, this hopefully will be a channel for them to do that. So it's a good pathway. And then the second spotlight is around our staff. It has come to light that we have got some incredibly talented and gifted staff. So being able to highlight the diverse and unique talents that they all have is going to be something that would benefit not only our staff members, but hopefully inspire and motivate our students. So hopefully we'll be seeing those come to light soon. And then the last one I'll highlight will be that Brian started a AV club at PHS and is in the process of training students on the sound and light in order to facilitate that. So all great achievements. Lots of other things again on there being planned. So kudos to Mr. Satch in organizing all of that. It's a great effort, but it takes a lot of time to do that. So thank you very much. A couple other things to highlight. He has definitely thinking outside the box, trying to identify some revenue generating opportunities. So just as President Kogan mentioned, ideas for revenue generating can come from anywhere, and Mr. Satch is definitely coming up with a very long list of ideas. So working on that. And that was it from Mr. Satch. The other things to highlight, just a reminder to everyone that our budget information is back, but goes all the way back to 2012, 2013. It's available on our site. If you just go on there and search for the word budget, you'll come up with the whole list of them. And then we did discuss trying to bring to the forefront the budget presentation on our homepage. So we will see that soon. We are going to roll off the kindergarten registration and then post that budget presentation right on our homepage, so it's super easy for people to find. Does anybody have any questions?
Hello. So first off was about putting the budget presentation on the homepage. So if you look at the homepage now, the top item is the superintendent search, and then right after that is kindergarten registration. they roll off by date. There's 4 currently up there. The last 2 are from November. So what's going to roll off is the oldest one, and it should go back to the top. No?
No, because we pin them. If you,
Okay.
we can pin what we want to stay there.
Okay.
So those who are stay there will stay there all the time.
Okay. So you can't pin more than 2?
We can only pin 2.
Okay. That explains it. Doesn't show, when you're looking at it, from other side of it, it looks like, okay. Still another question about the budget presentation views. That was for Dr. Sutter's podcast one, right? That was like a 400 views?
No, the actual budget presentation.
From the board meeting, you mean?
Yes.
Correct,
So the 313 board meeting,
Yeah.
correct.
your numbers are off a little bit. It's a little over 300, not 400.
Oh, Matt, come on. You're really bringing me down, man. You know?
Sorry, Bob.
That's all right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
All right, Mr.
Okay.
Chappelle, do you have the other?
Yep.
another
So
one?
the other committee was the Finance Committee. We met on March 26th. Attending were President Kogan, Vice President Chaffo, Mr. Rea, myself, Mrs. Tedesco, and Mrs. Banos. There were 3 main points on the agenda that we discussed. First was the Pomptonian renewal. Overall, we received their renewal information, and overall for the past 2 years, it's an overall increase of less than 2%, which is quite an achievement, quite honestly, given especially the state of different costs involved. So I'm very grateful for that. And just highlighting that the food service sales are $100,000 more than this time last year, based upon some of the changes that we were able to incorporate. So great effort there and great results. A second point is around our substitute services. Some of you might remember that the substitute services, we've reached our limit on the renewals, so we do have to go out for RFP. So we are going out, we're preparing the advertisement that will go out in early April, and the goal is to award a contract by the first meeting in May. Third point was the tentative budget approval. We are 1/3 of the way there. We've got 2 more parts to go. So the financial portion has been approved by the county, and the county superintendent still needs to review and approve the curriculum and instruction piece. Any questions on finance? Yes.
For ESS, it can't automatically be renewed, but they can try to.
That's correct. They can
Okay.
submit an RFP.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, just a quick question. Can someone explain what the review that the county superintendents need to do for the curriculum and instruction piece of the budget? I'm a little confused on that.
We tie in what we have in the budget in our program and on our finance lines with things that we're doing in the curriculum. So Dennis and Bob both wrote very nice passages about all the different programs that we have in the school, and we tie it into the lines. They read it, make sure that we are actually doing what we're supposed to do with the standards and everything. So that's what they look at. You're welcome.
Okay, that's me.
Okay. Mr. Barrios, I think you have policies on the agenda, but no meeting, right?
Yeah, we had no meeting.
Okay. All right. Mr. Ray, I don't think you have.
I have one
You have-
liaison.
Sure.
Last week was supposed to be the PAL meeting, and it was canceled. And it was rescheduled for tonight, which obviously I'm not there. But I just want to point out a few events coming up for anyone who might have some interest in attending. Next week, Friday, April 4th at 7:30, there is a professional wrestling event at the PAL. And it looks like a pretty good cast of characters that will be attending, and there'll be a special appearance by the Killer Bees. And on April 1st, this coming April Fool's Day, there will be a blood drive at the PAL from 8:30 to 2:30. And if you cannot make it on April 1st, there will be another one on June 5th. And in addition, there are a variety of different clinics which you could go to the PAL website and get some more information on. There is registration in the first half of April, ending April 17th. So anyone who's interested can look on the website, and there are a variety of different activities. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Abraham? You don't have one. Mrs. Mayor?
Thank you. Human Resources met on February 25th. President were myself, Mrs. Abraham, Dr. Wright, President Kogan, Mr. Ricker, Dr. Sutter, and Mrs. Banos. We went over the salary rates for the non-affiliated and for miscellaneous employees, both budgeted for 3%. We went over the abstracts for the non-renewed as well as the abstracts for the non-tenured who are gaining tenure. We reviewed the transfer list, which is from building, the transfer list is building to building. You know, it's a complete switch, okay? So we went over that. And then we went over the change of assignment list, which is different. That's within the building, okay? There's a difference. And both those will be placed on the April 10th bulletin and sent to the PTHA president on March 20th. We reviewed the kindergarten enrollment and staffing. We discussed the girls' basketball coach at PHS. There's very low enrollment expected for next year, so they're discussing going to NJSIAA for a co-op to merge those two teams. And that's the report for Human Resources.
Any questions? All right. Do you have anything else?
I do have a couple of things. Yesterday, I was oh wait, that's coming up. Never mind that. I always jump ahead. The committee met with Kathleen Hellowa, I always say her name wrong, about the candidates that she had gotten the applications for. She gave us all the information on all of the candidates, and, you know, and she sent us an email that had, you know, a little narrative, all of their stuff, like their letter, their credentials and everything, and then she gave us a packet that was a narrative more about what she discussed with the candidates. We narrowed it down from a big pool to a smaller pool. We all kind of, the consensus was for these, however many we picked. We'll be meeting next week on April 3rd for the first round and April 4th for the second round.
Well, round one for all of the candidates.
Right. So that was it. It was a good meeting. I mean, we had some really good prospects. We discussed them, and I thought it was well done. I think she really did a good job getting that material to us, and it was very easy to find. And that's all I have.
Okay. Mr. Chaffa?
Just a comment on the process. I think it's going really, really well. Very impressed with our consultant and what she's done so far with community outreach, the survey, providing data to the board. You know, we had dozens of applicants, and I think we will have some highly qualified individuals to interview. So while I am still upset that you're leaving, I am comforted by the fact that I think we'll have a very good selection of candidates to choose from as we go through this three-phase interview process.
Do you want to apply again?
I have no doubt that this board will select somebody that's going to be excellent, so good luck.
So I'll start off with critical issues. We met on March 18th. President were myself, Mrs. Abraham, Mrs. Chappelle, President Kogan, Mrs. Benos. A large part of what we discussed was covered by Charlene today, which was the CSA evaluation and the board self-evaluation. And the board self-evaluation will begin on April 7th, 2025, and close on April 30th, 2025. The superintendent's evaluation we will do in its entirety, as it is a CUSAC requirement. However, I think the evaluation to Dr. Sutter will be more of a narrative than a full goal setting, looking forward, because it's kind of your swan song evaluation. So we'll do a very good job at that. And Mrs. Abraham is going to oversee that process for both. Due diligence questions for the committees are updated. They are in shared Google Docs, so please reference that for your particular committees. We are going to meet an additional time on April 8th, just because we have so much going on, so we didn't want to wait another month before our next meeting. We are looking at the board governance document, which I'm going to try to get into a final draft for the board to consider. And then Mrs. Chappelle is looking at the pros and cons for moving the board election from November to April. There was a question I received from a board member about that. Sort of why, you know, what's the impetus to do this? And just as a reminder to board members who may not be aware or forgotten or didn't know, boards, the majority of the boards in New Jersey, over 400, moved their board elections from April to November because if they did that, they no longer had to put their base 2% budget up for a public vote. They were allowed to pass their budget without a public vote. That's no longer the case, and boards can now move those elections back to April without having a vote on the 2% tax levy budget. There are some advantages to that. Voting in April, you don't have the noise of the national or statewide elections, so you have individuals who theoretically are more knowledgeable about district issues as opposed to just a broad swath of the public who are coming out to vote. And sometimes by the time they get to the Board of Ed folks, you know, on the bottom right-hand corner of the ballot, they are probably, you know, fatigued. And I think it makes it easier for a separate spending proposal or referendum if we're looking at educating people at a time when there's only one vote going on. There are some disadvantages to it. The board will have to pay the costs of that election. And in the transition, your current board member terms are shortened, so that's never fun, but it is what it is. Any questions on CI? Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Chaffo. First off, I want to just about the governance. I seem to recall there was this extensive discussion about that same governance document at the end of 2023. I don't recall ever seeing the minutes from that critical issues meeting. I know it's going back a ways, but I remember there was a significant discussion about that. So I don't know if we've come across those minutes and be able to kind of incorporate some of that, because I seem to recall that the document which we received back in January was like 4 pages, and it was edited down to almost 2. So all those edits, I don't know where they went, because I'm looking at this current document that we received in January, and it looked like it hadn't been touched, and it was basically a carbon copy of Long Hill Township. Whereas even the last page where it spoke about the pledge, it had their Long Hill Township's bylaw numbers on the back. So I'm wondering where some of this came from. As to the board, moving the board elections, I'm concerned about as far as when it goes to the discussion of the turnout. Currently, East Hanover already had moved their elections to April, right? And the past 2 April elections, their turnout was like 2 to 3% of the registered voters in the town. Now, granted, East Hanover is a smaller town than ours, significantly, and they're a K-8 district, so it's a different dynamic, of course. But that's something to consider as far as, are we disenfranchising some voters being able to not show up? This year's April election falls on the 15th, or is it, yeah, the 15th? Well, that's right in the middle of our spring break right now, if we were having it. So we have to change around the calendar and be wary of that if we did so. I think that's something also to consider when it's discussed again. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Regarding the December 20th, 2023 board meeting, critical issues meeting, I went back and looked at, I was not on the board then, but I did go back and look at records that are available on the board doc site. I could not find minutes. I spoke to Mrs. Benos. It does not appear the chair of the committee at the time submitted minutes, so it doesn't seem like there are minutes for that critical issues meeting. The edited draft is there. There's some recollection that there was a 2-page draft that was prepared. The only one I've seen was a 3-page draft, but we'll rework the document. I think there was some good information at Morris County School Board's meeting that we'll try to incorporate it into it. And It'll be up to the board whether they want to adopt the governance document or not, and if the board does, individual, I don't presume there'll be a signed pledge on this document, so you don't have to, sign acknowledgement, but, we'll, like every committee, we'll just present our findings to the board for consideration and a vote, and if the majority wants to go one way or the other, that'll be the direction. And the same for the, moving the election from November to April. We'll present our findings, give our best estimate of the merits and demerits of doing that. We'll certainly seek legal counsel's opinion on that. We've already sought Mrs. Peterson's advice and comments on that, and we'll present that to the board. And again, it'll be the board's decision which way to go. Mrs. Mayor.
The original document, you had made a lot of edits to the document, I remember.
I did, in 2022, actually, yeah.
So there was something. Going on what you said about Charlene's presentation, that's a big problem if you have people who are new to the board in April and you have to do the evaluation. That's really tough. And if you have to get it done before the old board goes out, I think that's really going to be a problem. That's just my opinion. I think that's going to create some kind of confusion.
Yeah, I think we'll put that as one of the cons of moving it is, sure enough.
Yep, I got it.
Matt?
Yeah, to that point, I think you just had to try and complete it by like end of April. I assume, when do they get sworn in if they're elected in April? Is it May 1st? Do we know?
There is statutory code that says within so many days. I don't know that offhand.
So it's usually within
90 days of the election? So they would be like, what, June? Or
Later.
not July? You're
Yeah,
starting
July.
July? Really? Okay, so they're starting when, so then no, it has to be beyond. I'm guessing they're starting in May if there's, because what she said, she had a board that did it.
You have to do it within 90, but I think
Right, but
I
the
recollect that
votes are
this
certified.
This board had it, we were seating people in May.
Probably like May
before the
15th, I'm
June.
guessing, or something like
Right.
that.
For the start of the day. I'd have to go back and look.
So you just have to push back the eval a bit further back, and you're starting it in December to be done by May or something like that, or, April 30th, something like that.
Yeah, but that doesn't give a whole year for anybody to be evaluated ever.
Well, after 1 year, then it turns into it. You
Not if
like,
you're
you have
always
to go
starting
through a
July
whole-
1st.
It's shifted. That 1 year, yeah.
We just said it starts July 1st.
Right.
Yeah, it's a big consideration. We'll need
Exactly.
to work that out.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's an issue. I would consider it an issue, sure. Giselle?
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that as I recall, I think the last critical issues meeting that we had in 2023 might have been November. I think the last one got canceled.
Oh, okay, because it was on the calendar.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it might have gotten canceled. But I am still digging around to see what I can find about those notes, and I'll be happy to provide what I find.
Definitely appreciate that.
And on top, just to talk about the April elections, I guess one of the concerns that I had was, one I mentioned in the committee meeting was holidays. And in November, we're right before the holiday season. I mean, the only thing that's passed is Halloween. But I just wonder about the mindset, and people having already in an election mindset with either a state election or a national election. I guess it depends on who you ask, whether they're more inclined to come vote or less. The other thing I wanted to mention was if you have an outgoing several members of the board for an April election, would they be very motivated to give a very good evaluation, meaning not good, but meaning a very thorough evaluation and not just kind of wing it because they know they're on their way out? And I just want to make sure that if they were to be forced to complete something in a different timeline, that they give it their all and not just kind of, just half it because just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
I think it's an excellent point. Yep. Mrs. Chappelle?
I was just going to add, thank you very much all for your thoughts on this.
Yeah.
I will capture it in that pros and cons document.
Yeah.
And of course, we will circulate that so that everyone has the opportunity to add anything that I may have missed. And as Vice President Chaffo has said, we will talk about that as a group to make that final decision.
Thanks. Ad hoc developments update. There was no ad hoc committee meeting, but I did want to provide some information to the board. To Mr. Barrios' question, about a month ago, I did speak with the mayor regarding his thoughts on what form aid to the district from pilot developments might take, and we talked about a couple of different options, but I think the easiest one, the one that would quantify any aid if the township chooses to do that, which they're not required to do that, would be in a direct payment to the board. So I know he is doing some financial modeling on the residential pilot projects. Don't have any specific data for that, but they are working on that. I did ask the district to let us know how many new students are enrolled, not just from pilot residential developments, but from all that are coming online. So far, we have 26 students enrolled from Park. 1515 is set to open at the end of March. No students have yet enrolled, but we do have registrations from 1515, correct? Yep. And the administration has been, along with the board, thinking about this. We have added classrooms to Littleton. The first phase of that will open in September. It's 6 classrooms to absorb additional enrollment. There will be some classes moved from Eastlake and Lake Parsippany to Littleton to make room at those schools for incoming students. The administration will determine which sections will move. State submissions for the second phase of Littleton are being worked on. The architects will be submitting plans and that paperwork to the state in April, and obviously transportation to assure we have appropriate bus routes. Any questions on that? Yes, sir.
So, because there might be some confusion, many of us received a text message today, and I know it was, it's propaganda, but it's confusing. And it says that, I just want to make sure I got it and I can read it precisely. Mayor Jamie Barbario is finalizing an agreement with the Board of Education to allocate funds from the state-mandated new developments in town towards improving local schools. And of course, then there's a follow-up, which is part of the propaganda. But the bottom line is that when I saw it, it was kind of like, we are. So, you know, just as a more of a FYI, that is now out there to the public. So.
Any idea who that came from? Is it just an anonymous text?
It's a, let me see here, hang on. It is a, I'm sorry, I just lost it, hang on a second here. This is, it looks like it's a polling service or something like that, so somebody must have developed these questions. I'm guessing based on my simple history on this, but it was sent out based on my understanding to over 20,000 residents in Parsippany.
No, I'm not
Can I
aware
raise
of
a
that one.
conjecture on that? Only because it was mentioned at the town council meeting that there is a expenditure of $65,000 for a PR firm. And I'm wondering if they're doing some market research, polling research, and maybe just putting out some feelers. That's a conjecture, but that's, didn't just come out of nowhere, so I'm just putting 2 and 2 together, but it's logical.
Yeah, I received 2 text messages, polling messages regarding the mayoral race. Not that one particularly. One was who would you vote for, and a selection, and the other was definitely anti one candidate. But yeah, I didn't receive that text message.
But isn't that what you said, that the mayor is going to be meeting with you to allocate some kind of funding? That's not like news, right? You said that when you gave your report. So what is that? That's nothing
I
that we
don't
didn't
think
know.
we're finalizing an agreement. That I
That's
mean,
correct.
I think that might be a stretch.
Correct. Yeah. That requires board approval for any
Yes,
thing,
yes.
that would be agreed upon. Okay. Mr. DeVito.
Okay, this kind of segues into a point I should have made up to communications, and I apologize. So I brought this up to Ms. Menos, actually. The Parsippany Patch published an article, I won't go into details, about our budget presentation. They weren't in attendance here because they were able to cite you, Dr. Sutter, but they mentioned at one point a board member said, and they never said the board member's name, which I thought was kind of odd. But they go through the parts of the budget that only kind of were high-level highlights, but they didn't kind of get into the idea of, the headline was 14 staff positions to be cut, okay? We all were informed of what those cuts meant and how they were meant, but you look at a headline there, they just think we're just out and out firing 14 staff. No, that's not how it's working. So I think there's an opportunity here to try and shape the narrative of we know what our budget is and what kind of struggles we had this year with this budget into the same thing of what we're trying to do here with these agreements. So I just hope that maybe communications meets next time, they kind of come to some sort of something we can put out there about the budget, like I was saying about having the budget presentation on the website at least, to say, here's what it is, this is what it really means. Don't, there's misinformation getting out there, just like Mr. Barrios said. That's misinformation. Let's get our facts out there from us, if we can. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Well, I think that's what we're trying to do by putting the actual presentation on the website, is to get the, because I do think there's a lot of context that was done in the actual presentation, not just the PowerPoint. So, people need to listen to the presentation to get the context of, exactly what's going on. Mrs. Abraham?
I just had one comment. Kind of going along that route, I was just wondering if a little blurb would help kind of drive that for them to watch the entire presentation, kind of spur that interest a little bit. I don't know if,
I think I think once you tell people it's the budget presentation,
Yeah.
they're either going to want to watch it or they're not going to
Yeah,
want to watch it.
yeah, that's true. It's true. People will, but I just always wonder, like, a little blurb is hurtful or a good idea or not, but that's up to the communications committee, so, thank you.
Anybody else? We're good? Yeah, thanks for everybody, for those committee and liaison reports. I was able to attend Mamma Mia and Guys and Dolls, and they were definitely both wonderful performances and really showcased the talent in our district. I know Mrs. Mayer also attended and enjoyed them, as did her grandchildren, right?
I did.
Yes. Mrs. Mayer and I also attended an interfaith iftar dinner on Sunday the 16th. It was nice to hear from the different community leaders and faith organizations about the commonalities we all share, which is pretty much the whole theme of that night. And then the State School Board's Legislative Committee met on Saturday the 15th. The majority of the discussion was around the state budget, the school funding formula, and recent educational-related proposed laws, and all of that material is in our board packets, if anybody wants to go through all of that. Are there any questions?
We also, did you go to see Guys and Dolls?
I did see Guys and Dolls.
Guys and Dolls
It was very good.
Very good. Excellent.
Yep. Very good. All right, did we hit all the liaison and committee reports? Okay, now we're on to regular and executive sessions 1 and 2 of March 13th, 2025, and the executive minutes, it also says of March 25th. So, can we have a motion for the approval of the minutes? Dr. Wright and Mr. DeVito? And roll call?
Mrs. Abraham?
Yes.
Mr. Barrios?
Yes on the executive session 1, abstain on number 2, yes to everything else.
Mr. Vita?
Yes.
Mrs. Mayer?
Yes.
Mr. Rhea?
Yes.
Mrs. Chappelle?
Abstain on the March 13th minutes, and yes on March 25th.
Dr. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Chapa?
Yes.
Mrs. Cogan?
Yes. And now it's the superintendent's bulletin, number 15, Dr. Sutter.
Thank you, President Kogan. Good evening, everyone. On March 11, 2025, at Middlesex County College, the Parsippany Hills High School Science Olympiad team competed amongst the top 27 teams in New Jersey in 23 science and engineering challenges to place 10th overall. This is both a school and district record high for Parsippany. Congratulations to the PHHS Science Olympiad team for their outstanding success. As Ms. Mayor will mention, the district hosted the county's superintendent and her staff yesterday for a CUSAC visit. For those of you who are unaware, CUSAC stands for Quality Single Accountability Continuum, and is the Department of Education's monitoring system for school districts. CUSAC is a single comprehensive accountability system that consolidates and incorporates the monitoring requirements of applicable state laws and programs and complements federally required improvements. The system focuses on monitoring and evaluating school districts in 5 key components that, based on research, have been identified to be key factors in effective school districts. Those components are instruction and programming, fiscal, governance, operation, and personnel. I want to thank Joni, Dennis, Todd, Keith, and Nancy, and Jeannie for their hard work and effort during this process. From the feedback I received from the county office, I think the district did very well. Finally, Mrs. Caravano, our coordinating supervisor of K-12 Visual Arts, is excited to invite everyone to the Lakeland Hills Family YMCA to see the incredible artwork created by students from Parsippany Hills High School. Their pieces will be featured in our community art gallery, providing a wonderful opportunity to celebrate their talent and creativity. The exhibit showcases dances of the Muse, and Mrs. Caravano would love for you to experience firsthand the artistic achievements of our students. The gallery opening reception will be Friday, April 4th at 6 p.m. at the Lakeland Hills Family YMCA at 100 Fanny Road, Mountain Lakes, New Jersey. Tonight, for your approval, we have superintendent bulletin items 1 through 26 with addendum and read-in items 27 through 43.
Do we have any questions on the superintendent's bulletin? Okay, so with the secretary's report, Mrs. Tedesco?
Hi, everyone. On tonight's Secretary's Report, we have our regular business motions, including the approval of the Parsippany Hills Cafeteria Serving Line Renovation Bid Award. Does anybody have any questions?
Nope. All right, so we're up to
Thank
new
you.
business. Mrs. Mayor?
As Dr. Sutter mentioned, I was present at the CUSAC, part of the CUSAC meeting, and it was interesting because we had representation for the teachers. You know, I was there for the board. We also had representation for
Professionals.
Yeah, paraprofessionals, and was she a supervisor or admin?
She was a teacher?
Yeah, she was there. And one of the things that the county county said was that she was very impressed that we had all of these different groups there. She's been to a lot of districts and they don't have that kind of representation. And I thought that was very telling to what we as a district want. We want everybody to be involved. It was very relaxed, the part that I was in. I mean, we all sat around.
Not Mr. Rickers.
Yeah. It was very different from the last CUSAC we did, where we had to speak one-on-one to somebody. This was just like a roundtable discussion. She'd throw out, you know, what do you think was very good about this procedure versus what we've done in the past. I thought it was, like I said, it was very friendly at that point. So I was impressed with how it went. I liked this format better than the other one.
I think Dr. Gartenberg did a great job, and
Yeah.
their staff did a great job. They were very good. I liked them too.
And she said that, you know, last time, as you mentioned, you had binders and binders. They don't do that, you know, ahead of time. You send all the stuff in, and then that's done, you know. There's stuff that they have to see when they come, but that heavy lifting is done already, which is a great time saver. So I think our district, you know, is in good hands. You know, I'm very proud I am sure we will do extraordinarily well in all of the different categories. I mean, we have great people who are overseeing those things, so I have no doubt that we will score very well.
Thank you. That's the feedback we got too. Dr. Weinberg was very impressed with, our HR department and Mr. Ricker, and Mona Lisa was impressed with Dennis, and I just think we did a very good job. I'll thank those guys.
And this was Todd's first time. Woo!
He's in. He's initiated.
He's done.
Can you just remind me how often this happens? Is this?
That's once every 3 years.
3
They do a
years.
site visit, but you have to do a CUSAC self-evaluation every year.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions about CUSAC? Okay, so we are up to hearing of the public. At this time, if there's anyone who would like to address the board, please come up, sign your name and address in the book at the lectern, state your name for the record, and please address the chair. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak to the board. It would be helpful if you would like to address the board to please come up now and sign in so that you're ready when the first speaker is finished. As a reminder, we are video recording this meeting. If you are a student who wishes to speak, we ask that you not provide your home address, but rather give only the name of the town in which you live. If you're a parent wishing to discuss a specific matter pertaining to your child during this portion of the meeting, you may request that the board temporarily suspend the video recording. Alternatively, please consider speaking privately about the matter to the superintendent after the meeting. Speakers should refrain from using specific student or staff names in their comments and are referred to Bylaw 168 for further information regarding the videotaping of our meetings. Is there any?
Hi.
Yes, welcome.
Good evening, board. Thank you for all you do. My name is Michelle Pavlovsky, and I'm a parent of a student in the district. At the last meeting, it was said that Parsippany spends $1.3 million on transfers to charter schools. And I was curious if this represents families who are voluntarily choosing to send their children to charter schools, and if so, is the town required to pay to send these students to charter schools?
Yes.
Do you have any other questions? Because we'll let you get through everything before we.
I also was wondering how many students are expected to be added to the district next year from the new developments, which is partially answered, and how the schools are planning to handle the increase in students that's occurring concurrently with the reduction in teaching and administrative staff.
Okay, those are your questions? Thank you. Is there anybody else? I don't think there's anybody here, so I think that's possibly it. Dr. Sutter, do you want to
Well,
address what you can?
Robin, do you want to talk about the charter school?
Yeah, they're voluntary. The parents decide to send their children there. That's voluntary.
But it is
And-
mandatory that we pay.
Yes, it's
Yes.
mandatory that we pay.
And with regards to incoming students, we have done a demographic study. We don't know how many there are going to be next year, but we know within 5 years there's going to be approximately 500 to 600 students coming in. So we have made arrangements, as Mr. Chaffo said. We're putting an addition onto our Littleton school. We have six classrooms and one small instruction room. We're putting another 6 on with another small instruction classroom. So we're trying to make up for that in budgeting for this addition for the Littleton school.
And that demographic report is public on the website?
Correct. And we've also moved some classrooms from East Lake School. We'll be moving them in the fall, and from Lake Parsippany School to make room for the developments that are coming on that side of town.
Okay, so we're going to close the hearing of the public, and we will take our roll call vote on the superintendent's bulletin number 15, items number 1 through 26, with addendum items 27 through 43, and read-ins. May I have a motion? Mrs. Mayor, and a second. Mr. DeVito, roll call, please.
Mrs. Abraham?
Yes.
Mr. Barrios?
Yes.
Mr. DeVito?
Yes.
Mrs. Mayer?
Yes.
Mr. Rhea?
Yes.
Mrs. Chappelle?
Yes.
Dr. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Chaffa?
Yes.
Mrs. Cogan?
Yes. And I think there's no further business, so would anybody like a motion to adjourn? Mr. Chappelle, and second, Dr. Wright, all in favor?
Yes, ma'am.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
You didn't use your gavel.
Don't empower her to do that.
Gavel you.
I raised my hand.